We just had a really fun conversation with Sandra from Kansas. This was one of our prepper consults, and she came loaded. In fact,
She's
this
his
was
favorite.
awesome.
She had spreadsheets.
She had it all on spreadsheets, and they're still a work in progress, but what a way to go, and she's got things going on. So check this out. Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and today we have a very special treat for you. We have Sandra from Kansas who is doing great things, but we're going to do a prep consult with her, and she has done a great job of providing us with some photos and actually a spreadsheet. John loves the spreadsheet to help us kind of get an idea of where she's at and maybe give her some good ideas of where she can go from here. Sandra, welcome. We are thrilled that you are here. Tell us just a little bit about your situation and kind of some of the risks that you face where you're at and what you're preparing for.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you taking the opportunity to give me a consult. I'm sure I will learn a lot and it'll help me go forward. So I really started focusing on emergency preparedness probably just within the last 3 years. I had a few things before that. I always had my 72-hour kit and just a few long-term storage, the cans of wheat in the closet, but I really hadn't taken a look at the big picture and focused on a lot of things. So I began doing a lot of different preps, and I think I described my approach as a shotgun approach. And so I kind of am at the point where I need to kind of take a step back and analyze everything to make sure I move forward. Just being wise with my money and also my limited time that I have. So I've hit a lot of different areas in the emergency preparedness, I feel like, field, from gardening to water to energy or things like that to food, but there's more that can be done. And so I just want to make sure that I'm approaching it in the best areas. In terms of risk, I think in my area in Kansas, storms and tornadoes and power outages or water or things like that. Because certainly, being in Kansas, we're familiar with the tornadoes. And while I've never experienced one, we have regular warnings, during that season. And so that's probably the biggest risk. But also, we're not far from Leavenworth Penitentiary and military sites, both on the Missouri side and on the Kansas side. And that's probably a concern, as they can be targets. I have aging parents and want to be sure that I'm able to help them. If the time came, we'd probably be helping each other, I'm sure.
Certainly, and that's how it works. That is part of your community. You mentioned a shotgun approach, and I want to mention that that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you've hit a lot of areas. There comes a time when we do need to focus it in a little more and set more specific goals, but you've done a wonderful job of hitting a lot of areas and bolstering what you have and your preparation. So well done. Thank you.
And you mentioned that your parents live about 30 minutes away from you, which is kind of a blessing, because 30 minutes, a lot of times something bad that happens to you, it might not be going on up there, right? You might have a power outage where you're at, but they might be okay. So you guys have each other to be able to kind of have as your first bug out location. So that is actually a really good thing, as long as they're prepared to take you. And then you have pretty much 4 seasons. It gets cold enough in the winter that supplemental heat is really important, and hot enough in the summer that you have to prepare to find a way to stay cool. And then you made some great strides during COVID. Tell us about some of the changes that you made to get prepared once COVID hit.
Well, I started by just kind of working on my short-term pantry. I had a closet that was just a storage closet. So I kind of cleaned that out a little bit and did a little bit of purging, and then added to just that short-term kind of 6-month supply. So, focusing on canned goods and oils and things like that. I have also built some new garden beds, or they're still not quite finished, but I guess that wasn't exactly during COVID. That's a later project. And then I really built up my long-term food storage and started purchasing a lot of freeze-dried food. Even got to the point where I was a little frustrated with some of the availability of the freeze-dried food, just because I do try to buy more organic and, healthy meats and things like that. So my parents and I actually split the cost of the freeze dryer, but it resides at my house because I do most of the freeze drying. And so I have started to build up the supply of those types of things that are a little more in accordance with my diet or how I like to eat. So I've also purchased or got a generator, which I keep housed outside and just keep it covered. And it's on kind of a plastic pallet. So it's in the back of my house. My dad helped install an electrical outlet, and then he's just to keep it charged during the winter, the battery charged. And then we're looking at this spring or summer having a connection with my gas. So I will have the options of propane, gasoline, or natural gas to be able to run that depending on what's available to me at the time.
Awesome.
That gives you a lot of opportunity to have power when most people won't. I think that tri-fuel is a great way to go.
So we created slides from her spreadsheets, and then we've got some different ideas on them. So I think this will be really fun. All right, so the first category that we wanted to talk about was water. Now we looked up and you get about 36 inches of rainfall annually. So I noticed that in addition to what you have listed here, you talked about rain barrels. Can you purchase more than one at half price from your city?
Yes, I think so. They just have an application process, so you just have to propose the project. They have a dollar limit of what they will reimburse for, but the cost of a couple of rain barrels is well within that dollar limit because they will actually reimburse to landscaping and things like that to prevent some stormwater issues. So yes, I do think I could do more than one.
That would be awesome because you have enough rainfall that just those barrels would provide some more water on a regular basis. So I definitely start that process. I love that because you've got pretty much enough water stored for you for a couple weeks. One of the things that you'd mentioned was something about the containers that you have are kind of collapsing. Am I remembering that they're not super sturdy?
Yeah, they're leaning a little bit. I probably have too many stacks. I have 4 stacked on top of each other without support around it. And so that's probably too many.
2 stacks of 2 or something, and they'll probably be just fine.
And then you've got some good water purification tools. We would definitely encourage you to practice because like the life straw, it's a really great concept. But when you really go to use it, you have to have a lot of sucking power to get that water up. And so it's just good to know exactly what it is that you've got and how to use it.
That's definitely one of my weaknesses. I have not practiced on very many of anything that I have purchased.
And that's okay. Sometimes we get the stuff and then we have to get into practice mode, but you will.
You are doing a great job and we all need to practice a little bit more, even us. The other 2 things was maybe it might be a good idea to get some calcium hypochlorite so that you could disinfect the water before filtration and then also just be prepared to boil water. Is there anything else you'd like to ask us about water?
My only concern was whether I really have enough and, the water barrels. I think if I could get that accomplished this summer, that would be great. I would love to figure out how to use the water barrels too, because we do get such regular rain during the spring and fall, and how to pump that to my garden beds versus just filling a container and then hauling it over there. If there's a way to pump that to where it makes it easier to use.
Yeah, or attach a hose. Yeah,
if you can get 2 or more barrels, that provides you quite a bit of storage. It could be used both for the garden or your consumption if you need to.
Okay, let's move on to light. You've done a fantastic thing with the lighting because one of the things that I really like is that you've diversified it. You're not just depending on one thing. You have everything from the light sticks, which, they're one-time use, but they're also really good in certain situations. So we're a fan of the hybrid lights. I love those, but even the emergency candles, I think that's a great idea. So you're doing really well here.
Thank you. Yeah, the hybrid light is my only solar one. So I had thought about getting another one of those.
Redundancy is great as a prepper. Redundancy, having one in case one fails or in case you need more than one. Okay, Johnny, the energy, that's your big baby.
So you've actually got quite a bit of stuff. You've stored batteries for flashlights and I'm guessing other things that you would need. You have a power station. It's a fairly small one, but it would provide you with the opportunity to do some charging and some other important things. Your generator, that's a good size generator. 8,000 watts is a very good size. And I think that will handle probably all your loads. You know, it's going to come back to being able to have fuel for that and to be able to store it safely. This is great. And then you have propane cylinders, and the propane cylinders to me are a safer means of storing fuel. And with that tri-fuel generator, having propane in the larger bottles would be a really good idea. And then making sure those are topped off.
And I would make sure you check your legal limits wherever you are. In our area, you can have 4 of the 20-pound propane tanks in addition to whatever is hooked to your grill or your RV or whatever. So check to make sure, but usually it stores safe enough that they'll let you store a bit.
And the propane is okay to store outdoors, correct? So I could store that in my shed in the backyard or something like that.
Yes, that's ideal. And again, there's not quite as much energy in the propane as there is the gasoline, but to me, it's so much safer to store that it's a really good option to have that to run your generator and other things, your barbecue or whatever else. So.
And John got really excited that you figured out a lot of these minimum energy needs.
Well done.
Now, if this was mine, this is what Jonathan would tell me. He'd say, yes, the washing machine, we knew you'd do that, Kaideen, but the electric blanket, that can be really helpful. Your box fan, your refrigerator, your blender, because you eat mostly paleo, right?
Not so much right now, but I would make a lot of smoothies and things like that in the blender. So I have one of the higher tech powerful blenders that needs a lot of power.
But your blow dryer, he would say, get over it, Kylene. It pulls too much.
They do. They draw a lot, but usually you're only using them for a few minutes. And potentially you could use that to heat a small area. So, you know, I can go both ways on that.
He'll tell you he'll go both ways on it. But with me, he's like, get over it. No.
Yeah, the blow dryer is a hard compromise for me. And that's my main blow dryer, but I actually did shop around and I actually have a smaller wattage, like travel size blow dryer that will pull a little less.
Well done.
And then the microwave, sometimes people, you know, overlook that or pass that by, but it's a great way to quickly heat food and use just a small amount of energy. So great job there.
Right. Again, it's a high energy, you know, 1600 watts, but you're usually only using it for short periods of time.
All right, let's talk about emergency heat. And then we also put your miscellaneous stuff in here. So you said you have the Vesta, right? And the Safe Heat?
Yeah.
And the Vesta, like for both the cooking and the heating, I really, really like it. I noticed, and I think it's on one of the other pages, but do you have like 2 cases, right?
Yes, I think I have 24 canisters.
I would up that because it's super safe to store. If you buy it at Sam's Club, super cheap. And it doesn't take up much room to store. So I would definitely get 2 or 3 times that amount just because it's such a fantastic tool and it's not very expensive. I was excited that you had the buddy heater because when we turned off our power for that time, the buddy heater was my best friend. But one of the things that you can do, you know, the buddy heater takes those 1-pound propane canisters. But if you get some of the larger propane tanks, you can actually get a propane connection hose for that you can like have the big tank right outside your window and put the hose out there and then it can run for a longer period of time. So that was one of the things we talked about.
One of the things with the smaller propane canister, so right now I have them stored in my house, which probably not the best option. Do you have recommendations on what I should do with those? Should I take them out of the house and somewhere else?
If you could put them in the shed, that would probably be the best. It's a hard thing because you don't want them in environmental conditions that are challenging, shall we say. But yes, it would probably be better not to have them in your home. If you could find an old fuel storage cabinet, that's ideal because that stabilizes the temperature some and it creates a very safe environment for them. Yeah, I would probably go ahead and put those out in the shed if you could.
The shed can get very hot, you know, because there's no ventilation or anything like that. So I didn't know how much heat the propane canisters can actually take or manage.
They're really good. The problem is they will leak. If they leak, propane just settles to a low-lying spot and it just hangs out there. It doesn't dissipate. And then it needs an ignition source and then it can blow up. So that's one of the biggest concerns with
Right.
the propane. All right, now your grid down cooking, you have the Vesta. She's got the butane indoor stove with the butane fuel canisters and the Vesta, and then you've got little alcohol stoves, which I think are also awesome. So one of the things we wanted to recommend something for outside. So all of these are great, right? And they could theoretically be used outside, but perhaps buy a little rocket stove that you could just use biomass in, like little sticks or twigs, because that fuel is just kind of sustainable. You can always get that kind of fuel. And one of the things that I would really recommend looking into is something called the Kelly kettle. It's got the little water jacket on it, and you can just use the biomass. So I think that would be a good balance to it if you wanted to do something else, but like you've done great.
Yeah, I didn't list my barbecue grill there, but I guess technically that would be one of the outdoor cooking methods. Yeah, for sure. But we always have plenty of limbs and trees during storms and things like that. So lots of biomass to burn.
Yeah, it's a really clean way to be able to cook. So that's what I would recommend. Now, your long-term food storage, you are doing so good because you have one of the toughest diets for traditional food storage. You can't go to very many companies and just buy food storage because it's all full of sugar and chemicals. You have it listed out. So this is like your vegetables. And then you do have some of the grains and legumes.
Yeah, I went ahead and stored some of that just because, I'm not 100% all the time, with my special diet, and just because they're so easy to store. So
I think chia seeds are a fantastic thing to store. They're just shorter term. I think that you're doing really, really well. I would continue to up your amounts. Have you done these entrees? Did you freeze dry them?
The entrees, most of them were purchased kind of in the bucket from a company. The MREs are the ones that I've done myself. So the chicken tortilla soup, the white chicken chili, the ones down there at the bottom, I've done myself. So I have rehydrated a couple of them to retry it, and not too bad. I actually did extras of those, and then I put them in my 72-hour kit too. So that's what I have in there. I had some freeze-dried food or food that was kind of packaged more that had a longer shelf life, but even that long shelf life was not that long. So I was able to package it. That way I'm not having to change it out all the time.
I loved all the cheese on here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's also not according to the diet, but it's
not, but you know what? It's good fat and it's got protein in it, and it makes me happy. And so let me just be happy. If I'm good most of the time, it's all right.
Yeah, and some of that towards the bottom is the healthier cheese, to where a little bit is okay.
I think you're doing great. I love how you're tracking it. And then your fruit, what's in the mason jars? Have you freeze dried those?
Yes, those are anything in a mason jar. I have freeze dried myself. So those are things where I purchase organic, Aldi's or Costco or something like that, and then freeze dried it myself. So
I think that's great. Personally, I would add some honey and maple syrup, even though it's not stuff that you would eat very often. I think sometimes there's good reasons to have sugar, especially when it comes to preservation.
I've got a little bit of honey and a little bit of maple syrup in my short-term storage, which I didn't fully fill out or get that complete when I was doing this, but probably need to add to it because probably don't have enough to consider it, more long-term.
And part of it is how long are you preparing for? Are you preparing to live a month or 2 months or a year? I think it's different for everybody. And there's reasons why we would all prepare for different times. And I'm loving all this. And you might have more of the salt in your short-term storage, but I would really recommend 10 pounds. And the reason why is because salt, you can't just get it someplace, right? It would be great for barter. It would be great if you ended up having to preserve some of your own meat without other means of preservation. Salt is really good. Baking soda, kind of for the same reason, even though you're not baking a lot, I would recommend that you store some. And then peppercorns. They last a really long time if the pepper's not ground, and it can really help our bodies assimilate the nutrients in the food that we are eating. And you probably have it in your short term.
A little bit, but not a lot. And, as I filled this out too, I was thinking most of the salt that I have is the Himalayan salt, and I probably need to beef up the iodized salt. I'm not sure.
That's kind of interesting because iodized salt only maintains the iodine in it for 5 years.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Isn't that
that.
interesting? Well, at least that's
Yeah.
according to the company. And so most of the time I mean, don't get me wrong, I have like canning salt
Right.
and some different salts like that, but pink Himalayan salt is my go-to. And so it would be good to have some iodized salt, but I'll leave that one to you. You can figure that one out. All right. And then short term, you didn't fill this out much, right? Because sometimes tracking short term, it's almost not worth it because it's always in and out.
Yeah, that's where I have most of my fats and oils and canned goods and things like that. I feel like that's something I beefed up too, because I have
Oh,
a
good.
fairly small kitchen, and so I couldn't really store a lot in there. So by cleaning out that closet and converting it, it helped me to store a little bit more. And I tried to maximize the space even by putting racks over the doors. So it wasn't just the closet. They've been really great. I have it on my laundry room door too, where I store my garden stuff. I used to keep it on the shelving above my washer and dryer. And then when I sort of added more product or beefed up everything there, from dish detergent to laundry detergent to those kind of things, I ran out of space. So I just moved my garden stuff to the rack on the door, and that helped me add that and create more space.
That's a great idea. So yeah, you're already doing what we would recommend.
One of the things I wanted to ask you too about short-term pantry is that, when I do buy like meat and things like that, meat's a little expensive, and I've never bought enough to sort of fully stock my long term. A lot of times I cook it up and it's in my just regular refrigerator freezer, and I use it.
Huh?
I use it before I really am able to build up the stock. So I haven't purchased a extra like chest freezer or anything like that to kind of stock up. But is that something I need to be looking at as well?
It is a possibility and something that you kind of have to weigh back and forth, because that comes with it the obligation to be able to feed it, and if you can't, then you lose it. Now, of course, with your generator, you should be able to do that, but for how long? Just weigh that. And, if that's something that would be important to you, maybe you would end up getting more solar or something that you would be able to run that long term. And if you have the ability to run it long term, a freezer can be an amazing tool.
Yeah.
I've always waffled back and forth too about getting a vacuum sealer or something like that, because I want to buy them both, but yet at the same time, I'm just one person. And so I can't go through stuff, but that would help me preserve the short-term pantry items a little bit longer so I can keep them.
It would, especially those nuts and seeds and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, your backpack is amazing. And I love that you've got your freeze-dried meals in there. Looking at it, you've just really thought it through, and you've got a lot of stuff that is very valuable and important. One of the things, you probably have this on it, it's not there, but having where are your destinations, right? Where would you go if certain things happened? And do you have marked maps, like the real old kind of maps, marked with like 3 different routes of how you would get there and where the hazards are, so that you can know in advance so you can safely get to wherever you're going? So
yeah, I actually have not done that. I mean, I am a little old school and have a few maps in my car, but definitely haven't marked them or thought out different routes. So if I was traveling north to my parents, there's of course different routes I could take to do that. Well, I tried to think of everything here, and I did add some things after watching a few of your videos. It's a heavy backpack for sure. But as of right now, I'm still able to manage it. And I do want to add like a sleeping bag pad to go under the sleeping bag. I have a very, very old one that is not as long or as tall as I am. So I need to add something like that. And probably a few alternative food items, because the MREs that I have in there are all like, lunch, dinner kind of entree items, not really breakfast type things that you would normally have. So
okay, and then your garden and your home production, like your garden beds, they're gonna be so awesome this year.
I hope so. I ran into some a few troubles when building those and sealing them, but hopefully this spring I can get them finished up and get them filled so they're ready to plant.
I think that's fantastic. And you're making soaps and lotions and sugar scrubs. That's an awesome home production thing.
Not
right?
just for you, but as something that you can barter or contribute, to your community. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's something I was thinking of, a little side hustle too, and even in the meantime, as I, want to build up just kind of a financial surplus to make me feel a little more comfortable. That's something I was thinking of, but it's also practical, which I love.
And then you have a little indoor garden that looks like it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, just a tiny little arrow garden, which I usually am growing, herbs or lettuce in there, but I really like that for the winter time. When I can't grow outside, I can grow the lettuce inside, since having that fresh lettuce is something that I value just with the diet, when I'm sticking to my diet. So.
And then you have the goals of planting fruit trees and berry bushes. Oh, yes, I would highly encourage you to do that this year. The sooner you get them in, the sooner they're going to produce. And your average rainfall is almost enough just to keep them alive without any supplemental water. So they would be a huge benefit in any type of a difficult situation. So
yeah, I've been wanting to do that for a long time, but just wasn't quite sure where to plant, or if I should buy something that was potted or versus a bare root, and just wanting it to get going as fast as it could get growing and going, but also at the same time being practical with expense and my limited desire to dig big holes.
Yeah.
So this is what I would do. I would find a local neighbor boy to help you dig big holes, because he has big muscles and he will do it very quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of the bare root. They're significantly less expensive. You can find them in the early spring. They usually plant really well, and you don't have a lot of problems with survival when you're planting them, as long as you get them in the ground right away. I don't see any problem with the bare root. And then same thing with your berry bushes. Some of them you can get bare root, but some of them you can get them pretty cheap just in the springtime. So I definitely pursue that. And some neighborhood kid would probably love to earn $20.
So I've just got to sit down too and kind of determine the best location for those, just to make sure they have the best chance of success. And some of the edibles, I thought about planting in at least one of the raised beds, the fruit edibles, like either blueberries, just because they're more finicky about their type of soil. So I don't know.
One of the other things, and you've probably already done this, but think about planting perennial edible flowers or herbs just in your landscape. An echinacea or lemon balm or any of those kinds of things that can make a huge difference. They're not very expensive. Usually in our area, you can get them for like $5 a piece. Find a way to put them in with your regular landscape.
So Sandra, do you have any kind of a sanitation plan? Have you thought through, what happens if the water stops running or the sewer isn't working? That's one thing that I didn't see, but knowing you've probably thought about it and have some thoughts or plans.
I don't have a great plan, although I have watched your guys' videos on that. So right now my plan is like a gazillion rolls of toilet paper, which I do have stocked, but I have purchased extra like trash bags and things like that, to like go over the toilet. But that is something that I need to work on for sure.
I'm guessing that you are on some kind of a municipal system for your sewer.
Yeah.
Just something that you can work on, and we will be happy to help however we can.
I love that she got the trash bags for the toilet.
Yes.
I love that. And you're also taking a ham radio class.
Yeah, so I started that. It's just an online course, and then was going to go take the test locally. I got a little stalled out on that as I started going down the rabbit hole of the soap making and stuff. Just more fun for me. So I need to regroup and start doing that and make sure, because I know that will be an important part of communication, and my parents are already set up with the ham radios. My dad has his license and he has a radio ready to give me as soon as I pass the test.
Okay, the other thing we wanted to talk about was your community. Who's got your back? Who are you going to help take care of? So how's that working?
So I probably struggle with that a little bit, because I definitely lean more towards the introvert side and kind of getting to know my neighbors. There's some neighbors that are immediately close to me, a couple of them that I have called on if I need some extra muscles or things like that. the other community would probably be my church community.
We would just encourage you to continue to build those relationships, and you don't have to do it in such a way that you make yourself vulnerable, but just in a way of everybody helping each other. Neighborhood watch programs are incredible for just bringing people together. However that looks or however that works best for you, we just encourage you to continue to build your community.
So do you have
Yeah.
anything else that you'd like to talk about?
You had asked me questions about security and kind of what I was doing with security, and that was
Yes.
something I really hadn't given much thought to at all. And I shared a couple photos of the exterior of my house where I do have some large, like arborvitae bushes in the front of my house that are under windows and things like that. But there's nothing in the back side of my house. Of course, the back is a little protected by a fence, but certainly it's a fence that can be easily jumped, or it's not
Yeah.
super secure. So I'm just wondering what I should do with kind of that backside or with places inside. I mean, I've got deadbolts and stuff on locks, but that still isn't all that secure.
So there's a couple of things that I would say. Okay, this is something Jonathan's actually installing one of these on my bedroom door. It's called a doorcade. It's actually super easy to install. And then this bar just goes over it. And what we're going to do is this bar, we're going to actually have a Velcro sticky so that we can stick it to the wall right next to it. So the bar never gets lost. But I needed a safe room. So if somebody breaks into the house, I want to be able to get into the room, access my deterrent, my persuader, be able to call for help or whatever I need to do. I need that extra time. Those would be great too for a front door or for a back door, depending on your door. It won't do well on mine. I'm putting a security door on my front door, but I really like those. They're less than $100. And it would take somebody a long time to break through. So when I'm in the room and I'm not feeling comfortable if I'm sleeping alone, just put it down and then, I don't have to worry as much. So I think that's a really good idea. There's also security film for the windows. There's different locks that you can get. And I'm sure you know all of these kinds of things. You're doing great with some of the thorny bushes right underneath the windows, because I do think that's a deterrent. Will it stop everybody? No. Will it make somebody think twice about breaking in? Yeah.
The glass and breaking the glass, that was something that I thought about, that they could easily just bust the back door glass. There's a couple things that I've seen at my place of employment has done, and so they have placed on door jams kind of a lock that you can just flip over from the inside, so you can lock it from the inside, and that prevents anybody from opening the door in towards your space. And and they do have the film on glass, and although I haven't thought seriously about that because I feel like I'm in a pretty safe community, but at the same time anything can happen, as we saw at the Super Bowl parade a couple weeks ago. So yeah, definitely need to work on a few of those things.
Another big important one is lighting, just making sure you have areas lit up so that you are less of a target. People who are doing bad things don't like light. That helps. And of course, cameras. There's a variety of things, but you can just think about which of those are most important, prioritize them, and take some steps to make progress.
And they have so many of those really cool outdoor lights now that are just solar. So you don't have to wire anything.
Yeah, I thought about, I probably need to get those on the side. My neighbors probably think I'm crazy because I always leave my front porch light and my back porch light on all the time.
Okay.
But I put LED bulbs in there and then just pray that it's, low. It doesn't place too big of a strain on the energy costs, but definitely adding some more cameras and then adding some more light.
And if you want to put a security door on, or even a storm door also adds just a little bit of extra security. While it's not as good as a security door, they're a lot less expensive. It would take more effort than just breaking the glass in the door. Is there anything with garage doors that you guys are doing or that is helpful? I mean, I don't know how easy it is to hack a keypad on, the side of a garage, and I don't know how easy it is to hack it either.
And it certainly can be done. There are locks that you can put on your door that slide through the rail on the side. Of course, that's kind of inconvenient for everyday use, but it would provide that security, you know, in a tense time, you could just slide that over. You can also unplug your garage door lifter so that it
can't be
hacked
opened.
or, yeah. So, you know, there are some things that you can do that way that are fairly inexpensive. Some of them just aren't super convenient for day to day.
And one of the things that we do, our door that leads from the garage into the house has a deadbolt on it.
Given everything that you guys have reviewed and I've shared a lot with you, is there one particular area that you feel like I should start on first? Or what do you think would be, you know, number one, number two, number three, as far as areas to focus on?
I think number one is you need to give yourself a big pat on the back. You are doing great things. Like
Yeah.
you have made
You're way ahead of
significant progress.
99% of the people out there. You are.
Everybody at work
Oh.
thinks I'm crazy, but
We get used to it too. So,
Yeah.
you know,
We're just crazy.
we
We
just
wear it
roll with it.
proudly.
I do like the spreadsheet that you put together, and you had indicated, you know, maybe a need to get more clarity and focus. And so I think that's probably the best place to start is, you know, continue to flesh out that spreadsheet.
I think I would keep working on your long-term food storage. You have a freeze dryer. I would take full advantage of that. I would just watch for those sales. And when you're cooking for yourself, quite frankly, it's so much easier to cook for a lot of people than it is one person. And so I'd go ahead and cook the big meal. And then I would freeze dry the rest. And actually, even if you only have enough leftovers for one other meal, you can put it in like a quart-sized Ziploc bag and put it in your freezer, make it flat, right? And
Okay.
then when you're ready to do a batch, you just take a bunch of those out, right? And put them in the freeze dryer, because that's a great way to keep building that. And there's a lot of security in knowing that you have that food and you're just continually using it too, right? I think that that's really important and you're doing a great job there. I would work on security. I just feel like life is going to get more and more dangerous. We need to have really good relationships with our neighbors and with our community, and we need to work together. But there's some very desperate people, and I think that we've got to make sure that we are not a easy target. And then dig those holes, plant those trees, because they are good for your future. Really, really good for your future. And you're in a great place where you have the land, you have the rainfall. You just need to put it in the ground. Don't for one second think that we're like saying that you're not doing your job, because man, you are doing a great job. I mean, we're looking for things.
No, well, that's exactly what I want, because there's always room to improve. And while I have done a lot, there's lots of things I would still like to do. So it all just happens over time and as time and resources allow.
Exactly right. Those small, steady steps, and they seem so small at the moment, but as you look back over time, you have accomplished so many wonderful things just with those small steps.
Yeah, I mentioned this in one of the emails, but I've done a lot of first over the last few years, you know, first time growing certain foods, first time freeze drying, first time making the soap. So I hope to continue. One last question I have is just kind of given the state of the world and the news that's out there right now, how important do you feel like EMP protection is for just general electrical panel to car?
I personally think it's fairly important. I don't see anything happening real immediately, but we're heading in a direction where there's conflict with China, there's conflict with North Korea, there's conflict with Iran, there's conflict with Russia, and we're kind of getting a little bit tangled into all of these messes. There are some very unstable people out there in leadership of various countries that I think that is something that is a realistic threat. Unfortunately, it's not something that we like to think about because the consequences of that are extreme.
So we have an EMP shield on our home. My big preparation is to be able to just live without power. John wants to make sure that we can have power, but I want to be prepared so that if it all goes away, we're still going to be okay. It's going to be hard. We'll have to work together with our neighbors, right? But we'll be okay without it. And in EMP, there's a lot of craziness. That's, again, where security comes in, because things will get really crazy. I think it's not a matter of if it happens, but when it happens. And I hate to say that, but I do believe that that is kind of where we're headed.
Yeah.
So we don't know what it all is going to look like. And it might not be an EMP. It might be a cyber attack on our grid. You know, that is a very, very real threat. And so no matter how it happens, we need to be prepared for grid down.
Yeah, well, I have looked a little bit into that just in terms of the cost and shared it with my dad. And he's like, it wouldn't be too hard to install. According to him, he could easily do that. So, but it's just a matter of the cost of.
Yes,
It
yeah,
is.
it is. It's
I think it's more important that you have your food storage. It's more important that you're able to heat without power. So once you've got some of those in place and you have your resources, the other thing I think is that, okay, I am a huge woman of faith, and I believe that if we ask God, he'll tell us, he'll help us prioritize the stuff. So that's my opinion too. I'd ask and listen.
Sounds good.
we want to thank you, Sandra. This has been amazing and inspiring. You're doing wonderful things. And
We're so proud.
we just want to thank you because this is so awesome to see some of the wonderful things that people are doing. And now for our audience, the question of the day. What ideas and thoughts do you have that will help Sandra in this quest to become even more prepared than she already is? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.